If we can understand that culture affects communication, then perhaps we can be more flexible so that we don't create more problems for ourselves or others. I used to volunteer with the deaf community, and a couple of my favorite signs are bull, and this is a sign for the color gray. What a cool sign for something so ordinary. In deaf culture and in sign language, there's a lot of opportunities to be fun and cool because it's a physical and a visual language. Resilience researchers spend a lot of time investigating different cultures because different cultures look at situations in a different way. It affects what a person defines as a hardship and how people deal with those hardships. And clashes of culture can also be a problem. There was a story of one of my Vietnamese cousins. She lives in New York City, and she married a Black American. Back in the year 2000, she and her husband went back to Vietnam to visit, and they're staying at my male cousin's house. One day, the wife and all the females in the family go and they tour around town, leaving her Black husband and my male cousin at home. So my male cousin's in the kitchen. He's an amazing chef. He's preparing some food, and the husband is sitting there on the couch just watching TV. My cousin comes out and says, by the way, my cousin doesn't speak any English, and the husband doesn't speak any Vietnamese. So again, my male cousin comes out and goes, and the husband goes. So my male cousin goes back to the kitchen, and about half an hour, he comes back and he goes. Again, the husband says, and they do this on and off for they do this again and again for every half an hour for a couple of hours. And when the wife comes back, she goes, hey, how is everything at home? And the husband goes, I'm starving. I don't know what happened, but your cousin comes out, he asks me if I want to eat, I give him the thumbs up, he goes back to the kitchen, and then another half an hour he does the same thing. So my female cousin's perplexed. She comes to my male cousin and says, what happened? My husband's starving. And the male cousin goes, well, I come out, I ask him if he wanted to eat. He says, in a minute. And so I just waited. Now, this is a funny example of cultural miscommunication, and the outcome is just hunger. But some cultures, they communicate in a very aggressive way. Some cultures communicate in a very passive way. Some cultures are quite blunt. Others are quite vague. These ways of communication can cause us to feel fearful, angry, or confused. Why is this important? Well, when we're limited in capacity, because we're stressed out, we're tired, we're insecure about something, or we're dealing with an illness, and somebody is communicating with us in a way that we're not used to, we might react and respond in a way that's harmful to them or to ourselves. Now, let's take a look at what's actually happening here. In life, there are events. There is our natural response to those events. This we cannot change. And then there's the interpretation of what's happening with the event or with our sensations. Many people just lump the three together. But if we can just pause between the event, the reaction, and the interpretation, then we can choose to respond in a much more controlled way. For example, we had this patient and he has a supervisor. The supervisor has an accent and generally communicates in a very aggressive way. So one day, the supervisor would come up to Robert and say, Robert, what's going on with this file? And Robert would think to himself, oh my God, he's angry. I need to appease him. And so Robert would say, I'm sorry, you'll have it by tomorrow. And the supervisor says, okay, and walks away. Now, Robert has added a time stress to his life, which perpetuates his chronic illness. But now that we've taught Robert to give pauses between an event, his natural reaction, and the interpretation, he deals with the situation in a different way. So again, his supervisor comes up to him and says, Robert, what's going on with this file? So Robert now goes, okay, that was a very aggressive question. This doesn't feel nice inside of my body. I'm tensing up like crazy. But I really don't know what he means by that. So I'm just going to answer his question. So Robert says, I'm sorry, but there was another file that required my urgent attention. That's done now, so I'm working on this file. It's about halfway done. And the supervisor says, okay, and just walks away. Interesting. The supervisor was never really angry. He was simply asking a question. He just did it in a very aggressive way. So now, Robert doesn't have that added time stress. As a matter of fact, he doesn't have much stress at all. He can work on the file in his own time. If we can understand that culture affects communication, and there are separate steps that our mind goes through when we receive information, then perhaps we can be more flexible as to how we give communication and how we take in information so that we don't create more problems for ourselves or others. Have you had any miscommunications that were due to a cultural way of communicating? What did you learn from that?